Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to address most of the students on the very prior and foremost topic that comes under biological sciences, that is cell membrane. Most of the students often face this question in the examination hall, that is, what exactly is cell membrane? What function does it possess? Give a well-labeled diagram on the structure of cell membrane, or the most accepted model which is extensively understood by most of the people, recently given by the scientist Sinzer and Nicholson, what the model speaks about. Yes guys, we are going to discuss all about it. Before rushing on to the topic of cell membrane, let's know what exactly is a cell. It's important to know about cell before starting anything under this biological sciences. Cell, the basic unit of life. Life is meaningless without this basic unit of life, the cell. Cell is a structural and functional unit of life. Cell do arise from the pre-existing cells. Most important theories are given by the scientists named Sladen and Squan, and as well as Robert Virchow. When it comes to the cell, we do say that cell is composed of a very small mass, and surrounding it there's a boundary called as cell membrane, or also called as plasma membrane or plasma lemma. So, what exactly is cell membrane? The content of the day. Cell membrane, what definition it carries? Cell membrane is thin layer which surrounds the cell as a boundary, shapes the cell, also called as a selectively or differentially permeable membrane, which selectively transmutes or transmits substances in and out of the cell. Cell membrane also has certain models proposed under it by most of the scientists. Under these models, the very first model comes as Trilamilar Model or Sandwich Model or PLLP model, or Protein Lipid Lipid Protein Layer Model. Under this model, the scientist has said his view or opinion that cell membrane, its structure, does consist most of the components or substances like proteins and lipids. Lipids here are double layered. They contain or consist of hydrophobic and hydrophilic layers. Hydrophilic towards outer side, which is a polar thing, and the non-polar hydrophobic towards the inner side of the structure of cell membrane. So he actually says or stresses on the point about how is it a trilamilar model. The lipid is embedded between two protein layers and it appears in a sandwich model or pattern. The lipid layer is just embedded between two layers of protein. He stressed on most of the contents and components of the cell membrane but failed to exhibit his idea on the very important thing that is to be pondered on cell membrane, that is, he failed to say the people about why the cell membrane is selectively permeable membrane. He failed to say all this content. So his concept or model or view is kept back and next view has been taken. A unit membrane concept given by Robertson. He also said that the structure of cell membrane poses trilamilar model, but he also cannot give any opinion on dynamic and most highly functional components of the cell membrane and its structure. So here comes the very next and very highly understood concept or model given by Nicholson and Sinzer, that cell membrane is a bilayered structure. He said as it, cell membrane is a semi-fluid in structure. Cell membrane holds certain kinds of substances in it, like proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and so on. Proteins also, he said that they are divided into, basing on functions, into three categories like structural proteins, carrier proteins, and catalytic proteins. What exactly are structural proteins? They usually structures or shapes the cell. Carrier proteins helps in transport of substances in and out of this cell. And he also stressed upon the proteins as catalytic. They act as enzymes. He said all this. And he also explained about lipids. Lipids are phospholipids, cholesterol, other kinds of lipids, etc. are present. Phospholipids as phosphatidyl, call it phosphatidyl ethylamine. Phospholipids also has a double layer within it. He stressed on the content that as it is a double layer, it holds both hydrophobic and hydrophilic parts. Hydrophilic, which is water liking towards outer side of this cell membrane, and the hydrophobic towards inner side, which means water repelling or water fearing. He gave this concept as such, and also said that the components or the contents like lipids, proteins, carbohydrates which are present, mostly stressed on proteins, the proteins are present in a mosaic pattern, and also they float as icebergs on a fluid of ocean. He said or proposed this most acceptable content under the structure of cell membrane, that how does it appear and how exactly the cell structure is. So after learning these models, we have to stress our idea on what contents or substances are placed inside the ultrastructure of cell membrane, like proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, etc. Proteins, as I have already said under this model just priorly, that there are structural proteins, carrier proteins, catalytic proteins. Also they possess different kind of functions. They act as transporters, receptors, they act as antigens, they act or show their importance as for adhesion, cell to cell adhesions, and also they act or take part in cytoskeleton, maintaining cytoskeletal structure of the cell, and they also exhibit, they function as enzymes and also as antigens for cell recognition. Depending upon the place where they are present, they are also divided or named as peripheral proteins, or the trans proteins, or integral proteins. What exactly are they? Peripheral proteins, which are present to the outer side or into the surface of the cell membrane. What exactly are integral or transmembrane proteins, which pass through and through the cell membrane? Are transmembrane or integral proteins. So they are divided as such. When it comes to carbohydrates again are like glycoproteins and glycolipids. There is also a content in it called as glycocalyx. It also possesses a structure of its own. The outer word or outer surface or outer portion is with glycolipid layer. a portion of carbohydrate content in it. And the integral side is glycoproteins. So, when we come to carbohydrates, we speak about glycoproteins and glycolipids. So, these are all present. Then how do actually the transport system of substances or molecules takes place in cell membrane? By or through active transport and passive transport. Let's discuss what is passive transport, which do not require any kind of energy while transporting the substances or transmitting the substances from one to other. We can also explain under this concept the osmosis. What is it defined like? Osmosis is movement of water molecules or any molecules that are soluble in water from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration to equalize or maintain a balance between both in and out environment of this cell. It is as per the concentration gradient. So, passive transport does not require in whole any kind of energy to transport the substances from out to in and in to out. It only functions on the concentration gradient. It only stresses on the concentration gradient by passively moving the substances from a region of higher concentration to the lower concentration. Again, next point when it comes to active transport, yes, but the name itself, it refers to the fact that it actively requires energy to transport the substances against the concentration gradient. That means the passage of molecules or substances takes place from the region of lower concentration to a region of higher concentration, depending upon the demand to acquiring the molecules in and out. If there is a situation like if it requires the substances, even it is from lower to higher, it acquires the substances or molecules. Depending upon the circumstance, it does it. Like when we take the example of active transport, there comes, for example, sodium and potassium pump. When it comes to the next point, water molecules or water soluble molecules are transported towards inside the cell membrane by channels or pumps. Mostly they are also sometimes does through lipid layers also. The lipids being non-polar and most of the gases to diffuse like this. So this is a kind of transport which the cell membrane structure exhibit to just selectively permit substances in and out of this cell. When it comes to actually discuss upon what the cell membrane and structure is, it discusses mainly upon its contents and substances. So far I have said to you that the substance and contents like proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, etc. most are present like, and lipids like phospholipids, cholesterol, etc. Carbohydrates again I repeat as glycoproteins and glycolipids. And also stresses on the proteins, what functions do they hold. Side by side the function of proteins also hold for the function of cell membrane as well. They exhibit same functions as a function of proteins. It's important guys to know about cytoskeletal structure as well. Why cytoskeletal structure is important to know in this aspect? Because when we take our body as an example, the skeleton of our body is entirely shaped and designed depending upon the bone and cartilages. In the same manner or in the same way, a cell membrane also requires certain kind of cytoskeleton content in it to maintain its shape. How to design and shape it is depending upon the cytoskeleton. Cytoskeleton also includes certain kind of contents in it like forming microtubules or filaments. Microtubular are nothing but the structure which are in a tubular form, which are basically used for movement of oriented molecules or substances. And also when we come to the filaments, there are extensively many and non-tubular substances that are polymerized to exhibit as filaments and function so. So when we come to the models, the most accepted model is fluid mosaic model, where the proteins are placed in a mosaic pattern. And proteins as well, I have spoken to you just now about carbohydrates, proteins, lipids and all that. So most of the scientists given their viewpoints depending on different models about what exactly the cell membrane structure is. In the very first model, you guys might have any remembrance that we have talked just about the first point, that is Trilamilar Model, which is given by Danelli and Dobson. He has also said in his content that the polar hydrophilic part is present towards the outer side and non-polar hydrophobic side is present towards the integral of the cell structure or cell membrane. So in this way, he stressed on every content and aspect, but he failed to deliberately make people or audience understand about how the selectively permeable nature is exhibited by the cell membrane. So these all are the concepts or points that comes under cell membrane. So when we want to systematically say what exactly cell membrane is or plasma membrane is or plasma lemma is, the first point holds that plasma membrane or cell membrane, who coined it? Who coined the term cell membrane? Nestle and Kramer coined the term cell membrane. Plasma lemma is otherwise, which is said as, is coined by Pro. And the cell membrane, what exactly is it? It is the boundary of the cell that maintains the shape to the cell. It is selectively or differentially permeates or permeables the substances in and out to it. There are certain kinds of substances to be pondered on, like proteins, carbohydrates and lipids, and what are they present like, and different kinds of models to know the ultrastructure of the cell membrane, fourth point. And the fifth point says that what role does the cytoskeleton play in it, in the cell membrane concept? What are the certain modifications or moldings that are spoken in cell membrane, like foldings in and out, the ciliar, flagellar, etc. And what are endocytosis, exocytosis, pinocytosis and phagocytosis? Endo, which means inside, taking the substances or molecules from the out to in for the further requirement of cell membrane. What are what is exactly the exocytosis? Exo means outer, cytosis means cell vomiting. The substances which are not required are spilled out or vomited out of the cell membrane in this way. Those endocytosis also is classified again into pinocytosis and phagocytosis. Pinocytosis means cell drinking. Phagocytosis means cell eating. So, depending upon the functions also, proteins are categorized. Depending upon the surface on which they are present also, they are categorized. So, this is the complete content of cell membrane or plasma membrane or plasma lemma. You can effectively describe this in a systematic manner depending upon its definition, about who coined it or termed it, different models as well as different substances that are present in it, about the cytoskeleton structure, what are microtubules, what are different infoldings and outfoldings in the cell membrane is to be stressed out. So, this is a systematic description under the content cell membrane. So, I hope you have liked my video. If you have liked my video, then please hit the like button. Also, your subscription matters a lot. Please do subscribe and also hit the bell icon to get further notifications, and require warm blessings from my seniors, my professors and lecturers. Also require well wishings from my friends and juniors. Thank you guys, your turn.